Well, she's
That,
up most of the night sometimes.
that's probably good for her. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah, my
So,
kids used to be also when they were homeschooled, I think. Anyway,
did you bring some money?
Not me.
yeah, you're supposed to bring money is the topic. Yeah.
You're supposed to bring money.
Yeah, did you bring any? Nobody gets in here without money. I mean, you gotta have some skin in the game here.
I'm wealthy, but I don't have any money.
Yeah, that's good too. We can negotiate.
Yeah, we can trade.
Yeah. Hello, Doug.
Hello, Fleming. How are you?
Good. Today I am in the Netherlands, in Breda for a dance festival.
Oh,
That's good. Yeah.
Lila brought some money to the
Oh,
table.
you got some money?
She
Okay.
has a
Oh.
jar with some coins in.
All right, then we can talk.
She's in fact the only person here with any money.
Yeah, I think she's gonna be the bank.
That's right.
We'll have to borrow.
down there's money, but it's not valuable anymore. It's old money.
Old kind of money, huh?
So, Fleming, you're watching the dance or you're dancing in the dance?
Dancing in the dance. So this is a big festival of Brazilian souk dancing, which is one of I'm here with my
Sounds
wife,
good.
and it's one of our passions. And souk has a lot of sort of, it's very flowing, lot of body movements. So yeah, I like it a lot. So this is one of the biggest festivals in the world here. So we're here for that. Hello, Sophie. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Sophie. Hello, Sam.
Fleming, Heiner.
Hello, Heiner,
Hey.
Sam, Fleming, Doug, and Leia.
Hey, Leila.
Well,
Leila.
should probably call him Doug, although Duke is pretty good too.
I don't mind alliteration.
So Sam and Sophie, did you bring money?
No, because I haven't got any.
You haven't got any. Well, Sam has some in the drawer here. Oh, real cash. Okay, that's good. Oh, and you got cards. Okay, so somebody has a sound that gives a little feedback or something. Well, no, it's not there. Anyway, so money. The idea is that this was one of the 100 of something important looking. Wow. Well, Sam, you're seriously rich here. You got a bunch of money.
I got Chinese, American, and Croatian money.
Okay.
Probably some German money as well.
All right. So, well, we're ready to do some business then. So this topic came up because in this series of difficult things to talk about, sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, so my voice sounds a little weird. In the series of difficult topics, could be politics, sex, religion, money, and several people said that money was actually maybe the most difficult to talk openly about, to be radically transparent about. So that's why I picked that first, of course. So we'll see what we can do with that. So. And
wait.
Yep.
First, that means that porn was an easy topic?
No, I did. well, I actually I picked porn because it probably wasn't No, it could have been polarizing. So actually, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's better or worse. Like death was the easy topic because that was sort of probably not polarizing. That might not for Sophie. Sophie thought that was horrible. She was about to leave. So we're not all the same. So we have different kinds of responses, which is part of what's interesting about it. So maybe for some people, money is easy. I don't know. So the idea is both to be somehow share personally what's going on for us, and maybe to understand better what's the deal. And I don't know where to start.
I don't either, because if I start, you won't be able to stop me.
Well, can you start like a little bit?
Okay,
without
shut me
going
up if I go on too long, okay?
Oh, okay.
Money really pisses me off. Money in capitalism is an escalator to the rich. It's a debt modification system that basically creates indentured servitude. The whole fact that banking is a profitable enterprise, to me, is an evil. It does not enable and empower individuals to actually do what they need to do to make life better for others. It extracts a huge portion of wealth and creates billionaires, trillionaires who add nothing else back to society and are just ultimate consumers. I'm going to censor myself and shut myself up now, but I really dislike how much we worship this religion called capitalism without really examining what it's doing systemically to the world. We admire the evil rich, the predatory rich, the corrupt rich, the abusive rich, the uncaring rich. Now, obviously there are exceptions, but there needs to be more, because otherwise we wouldn't have 50 or 75% of the world's wealth languishing, doing nothing for regular people. Okay, so I did a bad job censoring myself. Now I'm going to censor myself and shut up. Layla, my apologies to you and how I said things.
You didn't curse anything. It was quite hastily done. Did you just fall backwards, Heiner? Heiner fell off his chair.
Wait a minute, Heiner. What I said was not that impactful. Okay?
Obviously it was.
No, there is something like a hole in the meadow, and one leg of the chair fall into this big hole, and I fall, and I'm up again.
It was cool. It was with sound effects and everything. It was well done.
We have it on record. I think having money or not having money is contagious. If you have some, it will get more and more, and you get richer and richer. And if you have little or no money, it's also contagious. You have to make false compromises, and you're going down the spiral.
So yeah, I don't know where to take it. I mean, I both agree with Sam, that I mean, this is it's a system that's set up in a totally unfair way, that some very few people are making a profit off of controlling the money system, and everybody else is just sort of running around trying to survive in a system that's rigged against you. You got to every year in one form or another bring back some extra profit for somebody else who's giving you the money. And I think that's rather evil. At the same time, I can also maybe distance myself from that and go along at least a little bit with the idea that, well, for better or worse, it's the units we are counting with, and you can still do better and make more of it if you do things well. It's rigged against you. I wouldn't myself say that it's just energy, which is the thing one would often say. Well, it's just energy. It's just you feel really good and you do what you love, then money will flow and so forth. However, it can do that even if it's the system is cheating you, and there are side effects of it. I mean, if the unit of currency was the skulls of goats or something, then I can easily calculate that a bunch of goats would need to die in order to give us the skulls that we need. But once they're dead, we can pass the skulls around between us, and then I could feel, oh, it's just energy. If I play my game well, then more of it will flow through me and I can do productive things with it. But I can maybe also not forget that it's dead goats that we're playing with. So this money system is kind of like that. Like it's created in a way that I don't agree with, but at the same time, it's maybe not productive to go around being pissed off about that all the time. Well, if I can do something about it, but it doesn't really help me doing work for a living. It's in a way it's an excuse for not doing anything productive. I'm not sure. I can certainly see it several ways, and I don't have an answer to it.
I think money in itself is, in theory at least, neither good nor bad. But I think it's in the form that we use it. It has been used as a mechanism to exploit and control for pretty much most of human history. But what's interesting about the recent developments in digital currency is there is this potential for money to actually release itself from that history. Although what we're seeing now is the kind of war for digital money, which is going on between the people that created it, the more kind of tech-based people, and perhaps more sort of idealistic people, and the existing power and banking structure, which are trying to somehow grasp hold of this new digital realm. But my personal experience, I've never been very good at money. I've always, because of the way it's set up, because it is basically a mechanism for exploitation, I've always had a kind of resistance to it in terms of either earning or employing others. Earning from work, I've always been resistant to being exploited myself as much as I can. And I've never wanted to exploit others for financial gain. I've always wanted to exchange things. Time for time seems like a fair exchange to me. an hour of my life for an hour of yours seems like the only real fair exchange. Yeah, but I've definitely struggled with it my whole life. And my background is art, and I've always made things in that realm without compromising what I've been making, which up until now has meant that I haven't earned very much money from it. I mean, I have had some, but not very much, because I've never been willing to go down the route that has been offered to me. Not that I discount the possibility of making money through art, but I've never actually found a way to do what satisfies me and fulfills me creatively, and make money at the same time, or in quantities that are sufficient to support me completely. But I'm ever hopeful.
I feel money, for a big part, express what we are projecting onto it. It is a kind of mirror of our education, values, history, and the word exploitation has been mentioned quite a few times. And I'm just wondering if that word, which seems to be an outcome of nowadays, or maybe the last few centuries, was originally meant to be that way. I mean, money as a consideration, as a counterpart of an action or service, a product, it was not meant to be exploitation at the beginning. It's down to ourselves that it went astray and it went distorted. I feel that the mention of the digital currencies team is obviously a great opening for changes, and considering that our traditional money could be coming out through this digital revolution with a much different way, much different aspect. And I hope it will happen that way. The battle I consider at the moment is obviously the release from the bank monopolies and the state power, because money is power for the states to control, obviously, the populations. So I think the public authorities are going to be probably battling and trying to reduce the move forward of that. Having said that, I still believe this is going to be the future, and to enter into, to bring the hopes for money to include other things than just banknotes and, how could I say, abstract, this pure abstract consideration.
My relationship with money has been long and twisted, and I've had lots of it, and I've had none of it, and I never placed a priority on it. And I've gotten to a place now where I really think I agree with everything Sam said, but without quite as much energy, only because I think it's, to your point, what you just said about it being distorted. You know, money originally was an abstract device to symbolize quantities of things. It was intimately connected to an underlying thing of value that was tangible. You know, the original clay tablets that represented quantities of grain in the first agrarian age of our species. And when it got divorced from it being representative of something substantive, is when the whole thing sort of went off the rails. And on a societal, cultural, level, I think blockchain and this emergence of peer-to-peer money restores that connection of the representation to a thing, a service or a good or whatever, and it renders the whole financial system and banking system and fiat currency, global fiat currency thing obsolete. And I think it will do that. I think it'll do that de facto. People will just, on a grassroots basis, take back control of their exchange basis, and they don't need any of that anymore. On a personal level, I don't know whether any of you have crossed paths with a guy named T. Herv Eckert. He wrote The Millionaire Mind. But, what he basically said was, if you're antagonistic toward money, you're not going to have any. If you think rich people are assholes, you don't want to be an asshole. You're not going to have any. I don't live for money or wealth, never have. And when I had lots of money, it went through me because there's no question I was antagonistic to it. I didn't really know how to relate to it in an intelligent way. And I had it plenty to have secured me and mine for, a generation or two at various times. I had 2 or 3 of those opportunities that just sort of went away in the sand. Not through profligate living or anything, just because I didn't know what I was doing. I've since studied up and learned. I don't have any real attachment, and I've pretty much at this point shifted 100% to a gifting orientation toward my services, my value contribution to things and people I'm involved with, and not doing that on a quid pro quo basis, but providing the channels and means for people to flow back to me as and when and if they feel appropriate and can and able. And, so I've sort of disconnected those two things. But there's no question to me that the industrial quid pro quo competition banking fiat currency thing is the most powerful instrument of the enslavement of the 99 in service to the one. It's got to go if we're going to make it past the 6th extinction. And the have-nots, bottom up, are rearing their head like it's happening as we live. So I put a lot of faith in the 99 if we can empower and give them a voice and an enfranchisement. Blockchain is half of that from the standpoint of a guaranteed basic income as a principle, plus blockchain, plus a rudimentary way for people to connect on the internet. And bottom up, we take back our planet. We rationalize our planet. And I'm complete.
We're gonna join your revolution, Doc. It's good. I'm with you.
You're all invited.
Yeah, I don't think it's widely known, or it doesn't seem to be widely known, just how radically revolutionary the blockchain technology is in terms of freeing us from the old system. I mean, it's utterly destroys the old system. And it's right there. I guess the only way it could really be stopped is if the access to the internet is stopped, which is conceivable. But it just completely bypasses that. And if I were a programmer or a coder, I'd be working fast and hard to make it as user-friendly as possible and as secure as possible and as anonymous as possible for you to transact using digital currency. Because if it's easy, everyone will do it. And if people can get access to internet easily with their mobiles or whatever it is, and they can send money independently for very little cost, if any cost, to each other, that just completely bypasses the entire established money system and globally. And it doesn't matter which country you're in.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
That to me is incredible. But I'm amazed at how, I mean, it's just my perception, but it just doesn't seem like that's a widely understood thing. Just because, and maybe it is because it's quite inaccessible still and fraught with kind of all sorts of security issues and confusion, but that's changing all the time. So I don't know, the race is on, because obviously the old money system is not going to go down without a fight, and they've got all the money right now, so they've got the power and the money. So it's a kind of amazing David and Goliath situation, but we all know how that story goes, so hopefully it's looking good.
I think there's viral potential as it evolves and becomes as ubiquitous and easy as credit cards and paper money. As soon as it crosses that threshold of facility and ease of use, so it's an equivalency, I think it's just going to decimate the whole banking financial sector. And it's not like you have to fight them or be in opposition to them. It'll just happen of its own accord, because, you know, when people like something and they get it and it's easy, they go there. And we have the internet to make that happen really fast on a really scaled basis. So it's sort of, I sort of see it as an inevitability. And, you know, the people with all that fiat currency that could within weeks become valueless effectively, almost as if by overnight. They're, you know, they're goners, or that part of them is goners. So yeah, I think there's an inevitability. And when you have Jamie Dimon screaming and yelling, "It's all a fraud," you know we're on the right track. It's like throwing spears. It's coming.
See, while I believe that we are headed in that direction, I don't think we're there yet. If you look at the way blockchains are implemented right now, there's actually huge redundancy in it, therefore huge inefficiency in it. So I hold that the projects like Holochain actually are quite promising, and they're not yet ready for prime time, but I do believe that they're on the right track. And at the same time, I wonder whether or not those mechanisms will prevent similar phenomena, as in central control. The early adopters, you know, get immense wealth without commensurate value creation, although you could argue that creating blockchain is value creation. But then, you know, it is then, in a sense, still unfair to those who find internet access difficult today. So the system is still rigged. And we have yet to exhibit that we as humans want to adopt the right values to make that technology equitable and fair. We humans, if we don't change, it won't matter what the technology is. Somebody will still game it. And while I can't say I was antagonistic towards money for most of my life, I mean, like you, Doug, I went through multiple startups, had, wealth beyond what I could imagine multiple times, lost it multiple times, just like you, I'm not living in a cardboard shack, underneath a bridge, but I'm not where I used to be, on paper either, So I don't have that hate relationship with money. I just think that the system is set up inherently by the banking system for them to basically take a cut off every transaction without additional value being placed, into the world. And that is inherently unjust, in my way of thinking. And that's what's got to change. Over.
Also, I'm not sure there's currently an answer to it in blockchain technologies, but in my mind, ideally, money would be created or would be able to be created when two parties or more parties have something they want to exchange. Like, I have something to offer, you have something you want, and money would be the medium of exchange. So ideally, it would be there when we needed it. So the problem is when there's any kind of central authority or also a centralized mechanism. Blockchain is not exactly centralized, but it's not exactly me who's generating it either. Somebody made a system, and even though it's meant to be sort of unstoppable, the people who created it might have to step in when somebody gets hacked badly enough, then suddenly they're going to split it and do something. So it's not quite over the centralized authority, and it is not really totally democratized. There's still, I need to have some Bitcoin in order to pay for them. I could create it, but that's not even particularly profitable to do that, and I need a ton of processing power to do that. So it doesn't quite meet the criteria of that the money is created when needed. So I'm still looking forward to further evolutions that might possibly get us closer to that, so that any of us can generate the currency needed to do the exchanges we need to do. So, and I don't understand all the ramifications of blockchain well enough to see if that's partially an answer. It might be, because it can make sort of, in principle, incorruptible systems of agreements. So it ought to fit in there somewhere.
So I'm going to ask an orthogonal question, right? I'm going to ask if we, and I might be overly romanticizing this, but to me, we don't feel like a village. We hardly even feel like a family anymore. We took the multi-generational family and we blew it up into these things called atomic units. We actually know about these nuclear families that no longer have 3 generations or more in the household. So if you look at that in a broad sense, we don't have communities and villages where everybody knows each other. And in fact, I believe that necessitated currency, because we didn't know each other, we didn't trust each other. Therefore, I need to know that my corn is going to result in some bread later on or something like that, right? What if we know each other better than we know today? And Fleming, I say to you, and I say to 149 other people, Fleming, I don't ever want to see you starve. I don't ever want to see you, out under a bridge in a cardboard box. And we have 150 people telling you that, and 150 people telling me that. And we actually then exchange among ourselves for those daily needs that we want. We're not associating fairness to things like, whether I get bread or whether you get milk. No, that system doesn't quite work unless we think it through carefully for things like the Large Hadron Collider, right? We don't actually have a system that scales to that achievement. But can we think about these things differently? You know, so that we're talking about doing things as a community rather than anonymously among strangers. If I trust my family, I'm going to feed my family and my family is going to feed me. And I don't care, you know, we're not talking money at that point. Can that scale? It's a romantic notion. Over for now.
Well, I totally would go for that too. I have problems with it in that we can't practically do it right now. Like if you need some money to get you out of a bind, then I mean, I believe in that system. But then those of us who need some money in order to gift it to somebody else, they need to go out and do some transaction with the money economy. So it doesn't stay within the village. If it was really a village, then you would grow corn and I would like make shoes, and all the resources are there. We can see them. It's transparent. We know where everything's been. If somebody is not pulling their part, we maybe know that and we deal with that, and we know that, well, he's not going to do much work, but we'll feed him anyway because he's part of the village. Everything is sort of out in the open, and in a certain sense, we almost, even if we share everything with each other, the value generation doesn't stay within the village. We still have to go out and make some cash or some Bitcoin. So if we can come up with some way where actually we can also generate the value amongst us, so that we really can make more of a village, then we've got something. But I don't yet. There's some missing parts that I don't see how we can do. I'd like us to.
Essentially, I think the question is, and I'll shut up, is the ability to sustain life necessarily correlated with our ability to generate value for someone else? Even our Buckminster Fuller said decades ago it's no longer needed. But we're still living in that model.
So a partner of mine in Argentina and I have spent the last close to 3 years working on what you just described. And in lieu of the current industrial program that's running, which is based on competition and fiat currency and proprietary rights and all of that. What's the alternative? And we wanted to drill down to sort of what are the fundamental ingredients for a different approach. And what we got to was sort of first and foremost is the idea of values, plural, that are multifaceted. There are a whole bunch of them. And that instead of value as equal to fiat currency and wealth, values were human being centered, common centered, non-competitive. You start sort of steering the ship in the right direction. And so redefining values is something that's a participatory sport, and everybody, it's all or nothing. It's sort of like, how do we get everybody in to the conversation and vested and contributing? And the other part of it is the agreement part, which is once you get to a frame up of what everybody agrees to in terms of the shared values they hold in common, which sort of inform their inaction, inform their generativity, then everybody's got to agree to that, has to buy into that. And if you can sort of look at it through that lens, everything changes. And it took us almost 3 years to unlearn, deprogram, and clean out our language and get out from under all of the industrial stuff that is really in the fabric of how we even talk about our world. You know, the analogy I like to use is, you know, Eskimos have like 20 different words for the color white. We got one. And because different snow had different qualities and they had that granularity of sense. And if you do a sort of human generativity list of things human beings can generate in terms of values plural, the vast bulk of them aren't even tangible. Like, it's all about the human experiential, you know, reality in the doing. It's the human being rather than humans doing. And what we sort of got down to was that, and the toughest nut to crack was, how do you address an action or creation or generativity in non-industrial, tangible, profit, value creation, productivity terms, all that language, right? And what we got down to was that each one of us's most valuable asset is time and attention. Like, that's the source of our generativity. Anything we do, anything we create, enact, whatever, starts with a decision to contribute time and attention. And so each person on the planet is a generator in that sense, is a contributor, greater or lesser to whatever degree. And focusing on that and starting there on a grassroots basis is probably the first step. And so figuring out how to give everybody on this planet a voice, a seat at the table, a way of participating or contributing, and this is not all theoretical. Like, we really drilled down. And the vision that we came up with is, we have the technology, the resources today to connect every person on the planet. We have it. It's been invented. It exists. And it can be cheapened up enough and the network disseminated and installed and put in place. And really all you need to provide to include everybody is a device that identifies them biometrically, is wirelessly connected, and has a button. Because a button means they can say yes or no. No education, no literacy, no technology fluency, no prerequisite or requirement, and other than pushing a button. I'm in, I'm not, I like it, I don't. Yes or no. Like, do that and let the rest of it happen, because human beings will figure it out if they're able to be engaged and empowered and part of the process. And the flip side of that is, you have to let go of the higher authority, the leadership meme, I want to control what they come up with. Like, that's not part of a commons human being centered thing. That's an industrial imprint. And the minute you introduce anything like that, you're back in the industrial pot. You just unwound everything and put it back at step one. And that's a really hard thing to let go of, because the almost instinctual desire to influence, control, steer, direct, framework, whatever, however you, is a really tough thing to let go of, because we're not programmed to do that. And we're not programmed to trust each other and to believe in our common humanity, figuring it out in service to everybody. So anyway, that's sort of like the Reader's Digest version.
5 seconds. Can I suggest that we're not programmed to trust each other because we believe it's a zero-sum game?
And that's not true. that's what we're taught, but it's not true. That's an illusion. As much of an illusion as money is, as power, authority, control, God, and whatever else. Like, not true. It's just not true.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Interesting, just to kind of riff on what you're saying, Doug. More recently in the Global Challenges collaboration that Sam and I have been participating in, it's been really interesting to, I had a leadership role in that, right? And I find similar challenges in how I live as well, because I live in a community home and we all make decisions together. And because I've been here for 11 years, there's this sense of leadership in there as well. And I just feel like there's something different that I'm looking to be and do, which is to hold the space for us to come together on something. So in the Global Challenges collaboration project, there's been tensions and challenges with not having given enough shape to what it is to actually do an example of what you're talking about in terms of giving people voice to be able to share what they're doing and what they're up to come together on a common purpose. And we've talked about, it's kind of like flying the plane while building the plane, where we're looking to bootstrap a way of being and knowing, and to be able to form something together that couldn't possibly be known to any one of the participants prior to engaging together. But the tensions around leadership is really interesting. And for the role that I've been playing, I have really been seeking to hold that space for leadership, demonstrate my own to a degree, but not the command and control version, right? Like, how do all I know is that we're at the end of this evolutionary sprint towards a brick frickin' wall. And there's a responsibility and an opportunity to be able to speak that truth together and understand what our common context is through a process of deep sharing and listening and sensing that space between us. What is actually there? How is it differently languaged? And how can we, I call it widen the pipe. How can we widen the pipe so that we can take in more information and kind of biologize it in our states of beingness? Can't be told. It can only really be done and then fed back upon as to how closely you were able to actually hold that space and test other people's lenses and challenge the words that are used and and come ever more closely to this space of shared resonance and shared purpose. So it feels amazing. It feels like there's so much opportunity, and there's these tensions of the competitive model and that the way the world is, that they come in, that, you know, it's part of me. It's in me, right? I'm like, yeah, but I want my voice to be heard, man. You know, part of the reason why I follow the path I follow, and I hold the spaces I hold, is because that's what I need. You know, I feel a deep knowing of a critical path that we can take to transition. And yeah, it's big. You know, it's like the sense and knowledge inside of being fully connected to this whole thing. And I think we all feel that in varying ways to our level of capacity to both feel and understand. And yet, how do we stand in that as peers and as no higher than, no lower than, a different kind of relationship together? And so, yeah, I've been deeply considering the challenges of what leadership is and what showing up for this space holding for this common purpose to emerge between us. And for me, that's the richest currency there is. We're talking about money, but, you know, well, that's part of the problem, right? Is this this non-connection of the value of things that is quantified within numbers and a extractive system of how our economy has thoughtlessly evolved. So I sit here, a person who has been living on almost nothing for the last couple of years, rented out, subletted my room, slept on the couch for nearly 2 years, you know, lived on somewhere between $60 and $80 a month in food, living on nothing, really. However, that has given me the freedom to choose where I put my time and attention. And that's actually, for me, true freedom, because I can invest in the people that inspire me. I can invest in what is rising from my soul to be, do, and act. And there's a metric of value that sits there within me having the capacity and the ability and the privilege to live my soul's purpose that is worth way more to me. It's the whole purpose of my life. It's why I've incarnated. And so there's a sense of deep appreciation. And it's not really a big deal that I eat cheap food at this time, because what is filling me is a deep purpose that I see resonating in so many people. And I'm just grateful to be able to participate. And so, hey, I'm not perfect, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And I might sound like a broken record, but I'm just going to stay here in this place as people see the purpose of coming together on where it is we are and what we need to do. And people are gathering. People know how important this is to be and do differently. And so I'm deeply grateful to this life, to be able to be here, to show up for what is next and what is now. That's what I got.
Thanks, Tammy. I'm fully grateful and resonate, but I cannot find the nice words you have, so I envy you.
Thank you, Tammy. I would like to step to a few paragraphs before you finished. When you talk about leadership, and I was wondering when you were unfolding your words, if you think there is a lack of trust, which means that the leadership goes distorted sometimes. It's a question.
I think so. And I think that a lot of it is not understanding the same language. Something is said and another thing is heard. Also, I think that there's such a richness and diversity of information that is explaining the same thing differently, that there's a natural competition that an unnatural competition actually, that puts blocks in the way of people being able to feel truly seen and heard. And I've experienced that myself. I know what it feels like to be like, hey man, I've got the answer right here, which is of course an egoic play of something that doesn't hold the resonance of what it needs to be. So I think that there's a mirroring of a right way of being that we're all still learning. So I think that calling people out on stuff and challenging and having the courage in the moment to say, hey, I don't really agree with that, or when you say that, this is what I heard and it makes me feel this way. Those are ways that we can better build the capacity to co-lead together.
Thank you. How much I love that word, Tammy, because it really brings me back to an experiment we made 6 months ago, earlier on this year, where we were playing each of us in our rectangles, trying to follow some gesture that each of us were triggering. And that was so visual that each of us were actually capturing attention of one corner or another and then following at random each other's. And it was such a brilliant visual, concrete experience to show the evidence that we can all lead from one corner to another, and the role of the leader is constantly changing. And what you've just said just brought me back to those memories.
I'll jump in with some reality, which is that I have to leave in about a minute to go and make some money.
Well, since we're in wrap up, I'm going to give about a 20-second last meme here. And that is, rather than collecting and hoarding coins, I'd rather collect and hoard connections with people. And that's the currency I'd like to see in whatever new system of social or community or banking or whatever that we want to create.
Hey, Sam, I'm in for it. Adding a currency, a consideration where the level, the quality of connections, plurals, can be part of it, part of the definition.
I think the currency should be attention and encouragement.
And since we're sort of moving towards wrapping up, we can also sort of, you can tell us how you felt about this whole conversation here.
I felt like I barely got going.
I'm going to jump in because I actually do have to go, and I'm so sorry to pop in and pop out. But I love it. This is what we need to be and do, and I'm so grateful for everyone here for so consistently showing up to experiment in these spaces, and especially you, of course, Fleming, for holding the banner and for just holding this space for us to experiment.
Here, here.
There.
Right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Tammy. So yeah, I felt this also probably just got started, and actually I must admit I'm not even totally sure what we're talking about, other than to sort of establish the value of having a conversation with each other about what really is going on, like the value of connections between us and actually sharing what is there. So what I sort of think I hear is that that's sort of a cornerstone, or that's a foundation for the different type of economy. And that's sort of connected with, who said it earlier? Was it you, Sam? I don't remember. Like if we're just transparent enough to each other, I mean, if you can see everybody and what is going on with them, you're connected, and you can see, you can perceive each other. Well, then you can take action in a sensible way, which will necessarily also be economical action. So I can certainly see what we're doing here is a good possible foundation for that. I can also see that maybe more is needed. It needs to go further, because even however much we open up and share with each other, it's still only sort of a part of our life. Like here in this meeting here, we didn't really openly talk about money and what actually is going on for us, which in some way, to actually make good decisions together, we need to somehow have access to something more specific, which maybe is boring to talk about, but that somehow I need to see that, hey, you got an ankle grinder in your garage, and that you're not using it, but this guy over there could like have a business based on that. Can we like talk about that? So I see a danger in sort of just talking about things and getting along, whereas to really do something together, we need to talk about things to do, as specific things with specific people. So I see the foundation, but I also see the need for the actual flow and system of doing it more specifically.
Can I just throw something in about that? In outside of these kinds of we spaces, that is the industrial program. It's like, where does the rubber meet the road? How do we produce something? How do we get to an output? How do we get to a bottom line? How do we get to a result? And the truth is that if our most valuable individual generative potential is where we place our time and attention, freeing up the time and focusing the attention on just connection, sharing, and getting to a place of sufficient trust and safety and learning that as a group, you can begin to actually get to a human being experientially based consensus. What is it we want to do from a value standpoint? How do we want to do it? And the whole yin and yang reality of each individual brings different contributive, generative potentials to the party, and tastes and preferences, and things they're interested in and things they're not interested in, things they want to be involved with, they don't want to be involved with. It's a really deep and complex dynamic when you prioritize the human being part of the process. And that requires a lot of time, a lot more time than the industrial model even recognizes or acknowledges exists, because if we're just commodities, we follow orders and we produce and we do. But if you sort of stop that program and you recognize value in the human being level first as a priority, then that time, the time invested in that, in cohering a community, in cohering a collaboration and a collective generative undertaking, that requires some time, like really deciding and committing to giving it the time. But the pull for that being generated by a completely different metric. It has nothing to do with productive output. It has nothing to do with getting to a bottom line or some tangible result. It's a whole different level and universe of importance and attaching value and significance. And I've sort of shifted there completely. So I'm the last guy standing usually, because as far as I'm concerned, there's never a reason to stop in this space and with the conversation connection process of figuring it out, getting together on a human being level. So I just wanted to throw that out. I'm complete. But
well, I think obviously we can also continue talking about it. We're not done. We sort of need to end up. And I mean, to me, it brings up there are different perspectives on it. To me, it's not so much the time to sort it all out. To me, it's more bandwidth. Like, I would like more bandwidth to see what's going on, not just your face there. I want to see what's on your bookshelf. What are you doing the rest of the day? What do you need? Then that's not so much time. That's more like, I want a big pipe to see that through, so that I can see, well, you need some flowers in your vase, so I'll send you some or something. But so that little things are easy to do, that are maybe could be transactional, but it's more like, I see there's a hole there, I'll help patch it up. Anyway, I don't want to keep the conversation going, so let's move to like just feedback of what this is before we end up. And well, I do want to point out, particularly since Tim just came back, Tim will often mention that the real work is what goes on right here. I mean, it's nothing else is particularly needed. If there's a problem, then we sort of solve it. I mean, if somebody doesn't feel good, then we'll do something about it. If somebody needs something, then action can be taken. You don't have to have a big master plan to do that, but you do need to be visible to each other.
I can't help but add just one more thought, and that is we as a species can't afford for all of us to keep pushing pebbles around a board, trying to compete with each other in a zero-sum game. We need to take each of these, plug them together in some way so that we can actually figure out how we're going to keep us from just hitting that wall that everybody sees in front of us, but we're still chopping down the trees on Easter Island, And until we figure that out, we don't deserve to continue. But if we do think we have a chance, we have to model that chance, and we have to think of these ways, together, independent of trying to eke out livings, for each other, because that's just pushing pebbles around the board.
Yep.
I would follow one lead you expressed. You mentioned, you questioned, Fleming, would be we don't really know in each of us what we are doing during the main hours and the main fresher hours of our days. I'd be willing to experiment on that and to say, okay, how each of us do we define our days? What do we do? What is the most fruitful hours of our day? And what are the most satisfying hours in our days? Which is, I'm pretty sure, going to reveal ourselves to each other's. So I'd be happy to follow down that track. Could be something very simple. Not necessarily with a matrix or with something very fixed where we all have got to describe what we're doing each and every single hours of our week. That would be pretty boring, but trying to summarize what is the most fulfilling in our time in a week or in a month or in a year, whatever.
Big brother camp.
I would take it a bit further and say, within that, what are you actually doing to bring about the change in the world?
Fleming, I'm going to send you a link. One of the pieces of my partner in my project is something we refer to as the collective metacognition machine works. And it's a design and for a facilitative platform, putting technology to work on exactly what you just asked for and described, where it's a mechanism for onboarding where people introduce themselves through a series of really simple questions to the collaborative collective, and a way for the collective to make it easy for people coming on board or wanting to contribute and participate to get themselves located based on what they do, what they like, what they're interested in, what they can contribute, what makes them happiest. And the idea is to try to automate that as much as possible so it doesn't impose a lot of work to get people together. So I'll share the link with you of the most preliminary beginnings of our workup of this, because it's a recurring needed theme.
Please do, and feel free to share it
Yeah.
in the group or whatever.
Yeah.
Good. Looking forward to seeing that. Good. Any other final remarks? I mean, the conversation is ongoing, but anything else to wrap this up?
What's the theme for next?
Well, I don't know what the theme is for next. Sophie just made a suggestion. That's a possibility, something along the lines of, well, what are we actually doing? Maybe what are we doing to contribute to the world? What's our thing in some fashion? So that could be, actually, personally, I'm also interested in the non-interesting stuff, not just what I'm doing about my mission. I also want to know, if you spend 6 hours per day chopping wood, I want to know why or what's going on. What's the so I think I'm interested in the peripheral stuff. So I don't want a long list, but I do want to get the stuff we're not seeing that you're doing. which could be one way of putting it. Show us everything you're doing that we haven't seen. So something along those lines. I think that's we will make a detour to do that rather than thinking of another difficult subject. Okay, people seem to agree. Okay. Otherwise, I'll say that's the end of today. It's been lovely. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, and see you again another time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.